today we are going to show you how to make this very cosy finger knitted scarf.
So, to make it, you'll need some yarn. We used about 3 balls of super chunky, but you can also use several strands of scraps held together. This is one that we did with scraps. Here's another one we did with scraps held together. If you haven't got seriously chunky, you'll need some scissors, Mr. Snippy, and you'll need a darning needle. So to finger knit, we're going to pick up the end of the yarn in our left hand and grasp the end between our thumb and fingers. And then we're going to wrap the yarn around our fingers backwards and forwards so that each finger has one loop around it, like that, keeping hold of the end, otherwise you'll lose it. You're then going to do the same again so that each finger has 2 loops around it, like that. You're then going to pick up the bottom loop and put it over the top loop. Okay, if we can do that without hiding what we're doing with our hand, you'll see it's lifting the bottom loop over the top loop, like that. And once we've done the last finger, that is the first row done. Now, the knitting won't look like anything until you've done a few rows, don't worry about that. So now we're going to do another row of loops and lift the bottom over the top. Try not to lose the first one because that's not attached to anything. Now, we didn't do a knot to start or anything, but we just held on to the end. And after you've done your first couple of rows, you can let go of the end and it won't come unravelled. So keep lifting the bottom over the top until what you see at the back starts to look like something. So after a few more rows, you'll see that what's at the back looks a bit of a mess, but if you give it a tug on the start, then it'll start to look like a knitted tube. So continue knitting, doing the finger knitting until your tube measures about 16 inches or 40 centimetres, and then we'll show you how to cast off. So when your knitting is long enough, about 40 centimetres, 16 inches or so, then you cast off. To do that, lift the loop from your first finger and put it on your second finger, and then lift the bottom over the top. And then move it onto the third finger, bottom over the top, and onto your little finger, bottom over the top. Now you're going to make that loop big and pass the end through it. So if you cut the yarn, leaving enough to tie a knot with, not very sharp scissors. And then pass the end through the loop and pull tight. Now you're going to make more of these. The more you make, the longer your scarf will be. So next we're going to tie our strips into loops. We're going to use a reef knot, but any knot that you want to use that's quite secure to pull the ends together. We're then going to use our darning needle, ta-da, to weave the ends in. You can skip this stage if you don't have a darning needle, but if you just thread the wool into the nice thick needle and then feed it into the inside of the tube that you've knitted. If you cut the ends short at this point, then there's a chance they'll come unravelled. Whereas if you feed a bit into the tube and then snip off the excess, then they won't come unravelled and the ends won't be hanging loose. So, we're going to end up, hopefully, with a big old pile of loops like this that we're going to link together into our scarf. So, the more loops you make, the longer your scarf will be, but you'll probably need at least 10 loops about this size if you want to make an infinity scarf joined together at the end, and then snip the ends off and make it nice and neat with our blunt scissors. Mr. Smitty is very blunt.
No, he's not.
Right, so make as many of these as you want, and then we'll go on to the next stage. So, once we've got a big old pile of loops, then we're going to join them together. The first one, you're going to put a twist in it. And then you're going to feed the next one through that twist. So just the first one, put a twist in it. And that way it won't come undone. After that, you're just feeding the loops through. If you've ever done loom bands, then it's very similar. You're just going to feed the loop through, fold it over, and make your new loop. And it comes into a chain. So loop them all together until you've only got one loop left. When you're down to your final loop, then you can either choose to make it as one long scarf and just tie the end off, or join it into a loop. We're going to join ours into a loop. So we're going to put the last one through both the beginning and the end. So that one is going to join in both, and then we're going to take a piece of thread and we're going to tie a knot to stop the whole thing unravelling. So if you were just leaving it as a scarf, then you wouldn't have looped it through the first one as well. You would just loop it through the end. And then tie it off and weave in the ends as you did when they were loops. And there we go.
Ta-da! It is so cozy. Goodbye.